Hello, YouTube. Alibud! Ha 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 ha! Welcome to the Electrojet Rock Show. I'm Jett Electro, coming to you from beautiful Las Vegas, Nevada, entertainment capital of the world. And we're doing our show again. This is the third show that we're doing, and I have coming to you my co-host, Professor Electro from Los Angeles, California.
Hello, YouTube. Welcome to show number 3.
All right. Today we're going to get into what we think are the best rock bands ever. So this is going to be a lot of fun. And these are not going to be in any particular order. And I'm going to start off with my first favorite one, number one, who I think is the best band of all time.
I was going to say, let's kind of set the parameters. You know, these 5 aren't in any particular order, and what we had to do was pick out what we think each of us is the best 5 bands. That means we have to exclude a lot of bands that we really like, because we're trying to pick out the 5 best. And it's a very difficult list because you're going to have to exclude some that you think, maybe they belong there. But that's kind of the fun of this little exercise we're doing. So go ahead, JB. What's the first band that you looked at that you think is the best of all time?
Well, I'm going to say this. I'm changing Jet Blair, which is my name. I'm going to go with our Electrojet band. I'm going to be Jett Electro from now on. So anyway, and you're Professor Electro, and our drummer is Joe Electro, but that's a whole nother story. So anyway, my first band that I'm going to put on the list is the mighty Led Zepplin. So I think they're phenomenal, of course. I mean, all 4 of the guys are just friggin' phenomenal. Of course, yeah, Robert blew his voice out, and he had to have his vocal surgery and all that in 72. He was never the same after that. But in the early gigs, you can hear him. He's just crushing it. He's just blowing every singer that came before him pretty much. He's blowing everybody away. Jimmy Page, what can you say about him? He's my guitar hero. Probably about my top guitar hero. And John Paul Jones, amazing writer, phenomenal bass player, phenomenal composer, outstanding keyboard player. And then, of course, you have the beast, John Bonham. Everybody knows about him. Swings like a mofo. Really has a great touch, but very, very powerful. And a little outside of what a normal drummer would do. Crashes aren't always where a normal drummer would put a crash. He won't put a crash cymbal. And his choice of fills and how he uses his foot in the fills. Oh, yeah, the beast. He's well named. So that's my first one. What's your first one, Professor?
I'm going to pick, and again, no particular order. I'm going to select Ritchie Blackmore's Rainbow with Ronnie James Dio in the band. I think every one of the albums that they did, I like, nearly every song that's there, and all the musicians were great. Cozy Powell on drums, Jimmy Bain on bass, and Don Airey, I guess, on keyboards, and just phenomenal across the board. Loved an live album, just off the hook, just incredible. And I'm a big Ronnie James Dio fan, and with Ritchie Blackmore, I just think the 2 of them together was just magic. Those 4 albums, just absolute magic. So that's my first choice.
That's a phenomenal choice. I want to correct you on a couple of things. Jimmy Bain, yes, on the bass, but you can't ignore Bob Daisley on the Long Live Rock and Roll album. He's a mofo on the bass.
That's true, him too. And I think they switched keyboard players a little later on. Too.
Yeah, it wasn't Don Airey. It was Tony Carey on the live album, And then they got David Stone on Long Live Rock and Roll.
David Stone, that's who I was thinking of. Yes, yeah.
But yeah, it is Tony Carey who's phenomenal on the Rainbow on Stage, which is a phenomenal album. Yeah, great choice, Professor.
And how about your next band? Who do you pick for your next band of your top 5?
Okay, we're doing this as the Professor said in no particular order. I'm going to go with UFO. Yes, I love UFO. The first few albums, Force It, Heavy Petting, maybe the production isn't so great, maybe the guitar sound isn't so great, the cymbals sound a little like trash can lids, but the songs are there. Phenomenon's actually sounds, for some reason, a little bit better than those other two. And then once they got Ron Nevison producing on the Lights Out album and Obsession, that's when the Sonics came up. So, yeah, I'm going to have to go with UFO. Phil Moggy, what a great, he's a very soulful singer, phenomenal lyricist. He has the punch of the band. He used to be a prize fighter. So, yeah, you don't mess around with Moggy. And, yeah, he can really, he's actually very, very powerful, maybe a little limited on the vocal range, but he really makes the most of it. The melodies are great. Of course, the great Michael Schenker on guitar. Yeah, I saw UFO opening for Rush at the Santa Monica Civic on the Lights Out tour. Schenker has always been, him and Jimmy Page are probably about my 2 favorite guitar players of all time. And, yeah, of course, Strangers in the Night. It's got the updated sound. It's got the songs off of No Heavy Petting and Force It. It's got some really good tracks off those 2 albums, but with the sound that Ron Nevison engineered on that one. So, yeah, UFO. Also, Paul Raymond. What an outstanding... He's actually a very good songwriter. He got uncredited on Just Another Suicide. He was under contract for another label, but he wrote that song. Outstanding guitar player. Really good... better than really good backup vocalist. His harmonies were always really spot on, and his keyboard playing. He had all the dynamics and made all the spacey, more Pink Floyd type passages to UFO. He gave him a whole his keyboards gave him a whole nother dimension. His Hammond organ playing is great. And he was a very, very good compliment to the band. Andy Parker, very underrated drummer, perfect for the band. And, of course, rest in peace, rock star Pete Way, definitely one of my very, very favorite rock and roll star bass heroes. His bass playing in UFO is phenomenal. When he's walking the bass, what he plays, when he plays it. Not to mention his absolutely over-the-top, phenomenal rock star stage presence. So, yeah, I'm going to have to go with UFO for my second one. These, again, are in no particular order.
So, coincidentally, we just kind of, compared notes before we started recording, and we noticed that we had 2 that were the same, which is no surprise. We have some similarities, Jett and myself, in terms of the bands we like. But that was one of my choices also, was UFO with Michael Schenker. I like UFO with some of the other guitar players, but not as much. I think the magic was with Schenker. And I just really like, as you do, Michael Schenker's that neoclassical sound and just his precision. Whenever I'm listening to a lead by him, it's just like a perfect melody, like a classical melody. And there seems to be no note that's really out of place. There's no useless notes. There's not a lot of that sonic scribbling, perhaps, that Jimmy Page does, which I kind of like at times, but it's just not like the precision of Michael Schenker or Ritchie Blackmore. Although Ritchie Blackmore does a little bit of scribbling too.
I don't know if I'd agree with that, but that's fine.
But when he's getting down and dirty, when he's just before he breaks the guitar up, he'll start doing a little bit of that. But I like it. but I think Schenker's a little bit more of a precision guitar player, and it's just love his melodies, that neoclassical sound, and just some of those solos he plays. They just sound so beautifully melodic, and they just transition really well. And I like MSG, but I think the songwriting to me was a little better in UFO, and Phil Mogg's poetic lyrics and just the vocal melody combined with the melodies that Schenker played on the guitar. Just some of those songs are just magical. And that live album also, just like in the similar way, the Rainbow live album, double album, just phenomenal. I like the UFO, the Strangers in the Night album. Those are two of my favorite albums. They both happen to be live albums. Well, they're kind of live. I'm sure they've been fixed. But, so I'm with Jett on UFO with Michael Schenker. That would be one of my choices for top 5 also.
Yeah, Professor, I love it. Sonic scribbling. That's pretty funny. That's a good one. Okay. Now, I will say this. The post-Schenker albums are actually, I think Wild and Willing and Innocent is actually a masterpiece myself. And Tonk was a great guitar player. I saw him at Hammersmith Odeon in 1983 in London, and they friggin' crushed it. I will say it was phenomenal. And also, I saw him at the Reseda Country Club with Atomic Tommy. I really do actually like the Misdemeanor album quite a bit, even though it's got the Simmons drums on it, which is I guess it's actually kind of cool. It's may date it a little bit, but it sounds really good. I do have to say one thing about UFO. I mean, come on, man. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Okay, I'm sure I could come up with some examples, but UFO is not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah, don't get me started on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Okay, so like for example, okay, I don't really know too much about rap. I'm just coming up with an example here off the top of my head. I don't know much about Tupac, and I know he's a legend. I'm sure he's really talented. Never really heard his stuff. But, I mean, they got Tupac in there before UFO. I mean, come on, man.
So who do you got as your next of the 5?
The next of the 5 I have is, hailing from the city of big shoulders, Styx. Oh, do I love Styx. And Dennis, if you're listening, and Tommy and JY, please, I've seen him with Lawrence. Lawrence is great and everything, and I'm glad the guys get to still do it. But everybody wants you guys. You guys would come back. You guys would clean up. One of the greatest bands ever, on record, songwriting, sound, vocals, phenomenal. I saw them probably about 4 times at the Forum in Los Angeles. The first one I saw was the Pieces of 8 tour. They came out with Great White Hope with JY, was at a complete rock star, singing like a monster. Oh yeah, JY is one of my biggest heroes. Phenomenal guitar player, and his guitar sound, one of the only guys that uses the bridge pickup. He's got the best bridge pickup sound. That most guys usually use the neck pickup on a Strat, or maybe the number 2 or 4 position. JY has about the best bridge pickup Strat sound of anybody going on. Maybe one other guy would be Richie Blackmore for the bridge pickup, but most people do not use the bridge pickup on the Strat. Usually they're in number 2 position, like Clapton, or the number 4, which gets rid of the 60 cycle hum, or usually the neck pickup. Like Stevie Ray Vaughan is like, he's always neck pickup as far as I know. So anyway, yeah, Styx, phenomenal. Dennis, phenomenal vocalist, composer. Tommy Shaw, phenomenal vocalist, composer. Dennis, great keyboard player, phenomenal. Also, Tommy Shaw is an outstanding guitar player. And then when they are all singing at the same time, They blend perfectly, and it's just rock and roll magic. John Panazzo, extremely underrated drummer. When I saw him, he did the first time on that Pieces of Eight tour. He just blew me away on his drum solo with the octobans thing, with the octobans going. There's those little tiny drums, but they have really long shells on them. And I don't know, he was off on some kind of Cobham thing, but they were sounding like cannons. Yeah, Styx, phenomenal, man. I just love Styx. Their records are, many of the records are just phenomenal. I love Lady. I remember the first time I heard it when I was a little kid. It sounded really great. Crystal Balls, the first album with Tommy Shaw, great album. Even the one before Tommy, Lorelei and Light Up, really some of my favorite songs ever. And then once you got into Grand Illusion is a masterpiece, top to bottom. Pieces of Eight, top to bottom, phenomenal. And the next one, Cornerstone, was really, really great record. And Paradise Theater, really great record. Then I think they got off into Secret. They got into that, and I guess it kind of broke up the band. There was a little bit of friction there between Tommy and Dennis. So, come on, Tommy and Dennis, please patch it up. Work it out, mate. So, who do you got, Professor?
Yeah, I'd have to. I made a second list of 5. They were kind of like honorable mention, and I put Styx in there too because I'm a big Styx fan as well. So, there is kind of a little bootleg video of Tommy and Dennis. They got together at a book signing that Tommy was doing at Borders Bookstore after they broke up. And they sing a little bit on that video, on that YouTube video, and man, they sound great. Yeah, it'd be great to see them get back together again, but from what I hear, it's probably not going to happen. But my next choice is a little proggy also. I kind of look at them almost in some ways like the American version of Queen, which is Kansas. And Kansas, to me, as far as being best, boy, I mean, they're progressive, but they're also, they can be a little poppy, they can be, melodic, just a phenomenal band, great musicians, great albums, really symphonic, and just great performances by all the members. Steve Walsh in particular, just a great singer, especially when he was at his peak, just powerful and incredible range, and great songwriting with Kerry Livgren and Robbie Steinhardt adding that violin to add that real just prairie sound almost that just has that Americana feel to it, but at the same time it's progressive, which is just it's incredible. It's a very, very American sound, in a genre, I think, like where Queen, where it's just has that very European feel. Kansas is progressive, but it has a very distinctive American flavor, mostly because of the violin. It definitely has that prairie western sound to it. So yeah, I would put Kansas as my next choice, and phenomenal band.
Okay, these are in no particular order. This is number 4 for me. I'm going to have to go with Aerosmith. I saw them at the Forum. I was up in Nosebleed. I could see how friggin' loud it was. They were really, really loud, really, really powerful. The first 4 records are just masterpieces. Get Your Wings, very, very underrated record. Every single song on it is phenomenal. Even Draw the Line is actually, there's maybe only one or two cuts there. Yeah, you could say they're a little bit maybe fillery a little bit, but Aerosmith phoning it in compositionally is still heads and shoulders above almost anything else in rock and roll. So yeah, Steven Tyler, The Mouth That Roared, the Demon of Screamin', back in the day, Oh, and he can still do it. But man, you watch those old videos, like there's some footage of them in Houston and all that kind of stuff. There's one from Houston, or there's one at Pontiac Stadium. The Houston one, man, they are just on fire. Tyler's crushing it. Joey Kramer, phenomenal drummer. Tom Hamilton, great bass player. Brad's a great guitar player. He did all the stuff that Joe didn't really want to have anything to do with. Joe came up with some great riffs. Him and Tyler had the Jagger Richards kind of thing going there, but only like more back then. That was like kind of what heavy metal was back in the day, which is the term has completely changed. Yeah, I just love Aerosmith. Aerosmith Rocks is probably maybe in the top 5 greatest rock and roll albums of all time. It's a complete masterpiece. The sonics on it are phenomenal. It's got the sleaze. It's got the swagger. It's real. It's got a bit of rawness in there. It was recorded at 15 IPS, so it has a really good low end on it. Very, very powerful. It's a friggin' masterpiece. So yeah, I just love Aerosmith. If you'd asked me in 1978 when I was a kid who my favorite band was, it was Aerosmith. I remember the first time I heard, actually they had a television commercial on it. I used to watch the Three Stooges, and the commercial would come on, and it would be them live doing Train Kept a Rolling. The first time I saw it, it just blew me away. It's like, who are these guys? These guys are like kind of like the Stones, but they're heavier. They're like heavy Stones. And then I remember the first time I heard Sweet Emotion, I know exactly where I was. I was in Mexico in a rec room at this resort, and it said Aerosmith. I put it on. It was Sweet Emotion, and it blew me away. The riffs in that, it's almost kind of like a Jeff Beck kind of riff. Yeah, man, Aerosmith, they still do it for me. But basically, the first 4 albums draw the line almost as good as the first 4. So yeah, the first 4 Aerosmith kids, you got to get those records. They are outstanding. So what do you got for your next one, Professor?
So I'm with you on Aerosmith. Although they didn't make my top 5, they were in one of my 5 honorable mentions. And yeah, I agree with 99% of everything you said about them. They really got it for me too, especially back in the day. But I had to have them get edged out by Van Halen. Van Halen was made my top 5. Not initially I liked him, but I wasn't crazy about him. I thought Eddie's flashy guitar was kind of a little bit, just a little bit comic booky, a little bit gimmicky, I think at first is the way I looked at it compared to Ritchie Blackmore, to Michael Schenker. He didn't have quite that same neoclassical sound, but over time I really grew to really like them, their energy, and every album I thought to me, is very listenable. And today, even when, just about any song comes on by them, I'll turn the radio up. Where other bands that, even though I love them, I love Sweet Emotion, but I've heard it so many times now, it's kind of worn out for me. But Van Halen just always feels fresh. And, I think the fact that we got to meet Eddie and got to meet Dave back in the day, I think that kind of like made me give him a second listen. And then over time, even actually after Sammy joined the band, I liked both versions of Van Halen. And especially OU812, I think it's a great album. And so I think, even when they changed singers, to me, there's still a lot of good songs. On some of those Sammy records also. So, and they, of course, a great stage show, just, over-the-top great stage show. So that's why I had to put them in the top 5. So that would complete my top 5. Ritchie Blackmore's Rainbow with Dio, Rush, UFO. I haven't covered Rush yet. UFO with Schenker, Kansas, and Van Halen.
Yeah, those are great. That's a good choice there, Professor. And kids, what he was alluding to, we'll do a whole nother podcast on that one about the time that we were hanging with Dave a little bit, and there was a preceding story where the professor was in Guitar Center on Ventura Boulevard. He was playing a bass, and Eddie Van Halen was in there, and the professor didn't recognize him because he was looking just sort of like kind of a regular guy, a little bit like a regular kind of like tore back a little bit rock and roll guy, and the professor didn't recognize him. But we'll save
not
that
right away. I did after a while, but not right away, not in the beginning. So, but that's a story, whole other podcast, whole other story in and of itself. But so who do you got next? Do you have another one for your top five?
Okay, and my last one, number 5. Again, these are in no particular order. I'm going to have to go with Kansas. Kansas, they had, as the professor mentioned, Steve Walsh, phenomenal vocals. The compositions, the Mask album, very, very underrated. The guys in the band, Kerry Livgren, composer extraordinaire. Steve Walsh with his keyboard playing, very, very Keith Emerson-like. Plus he had the fire, doing all the handstands. His Hammond playing is phenomenal. Compositionally, Kerry's guitar playing, Kerry's keyboard playing. I'm a huge Kerry Livgren fan. Phil Ehart, very, very good drummer. Robbie Steinhardt with the classical, added that classical dimension, and no rock bands really had like a violin going like that at the time. Dave Hope, very, very underrated bass player. One of my absolute favorite bass players. The tone that he got, the note choices he played on the bass. The records sound phenomenal. Produced by Jeff Glicksman. They did some remixes on, like, say, Leftoverture. They ruined it with they changed the echo and the ambiances on it, which I don't like. And I got to give props to Rich Williams. Really, really good. Very, very tasteful. I love Rich's playing and his contributions to the band. So, yeah, I'm a big, big Kansas fan. That Mask album is really good. Song for America is a masterpiece. And then, of course, there's Leftoverture. Every single song on it is just over-the-top amazing. And Point of No Return, Closet Chronicles, the Steve Walsh composition that kind of broke up the band, I guess. I do believe that one's about who was the aviator guy? It's escaping me now. The character that
Howard Hughes?
Yeah, Howard Hughes. Yeah, Closet Chronicles. I'm pretty sure that one's about Howard Hughes, which is a very good portrait of him. A musical, compositional portrait. And then A Point of No Return is a friggin' masterpiece. Yeah, that's a great album. And then even Mask is a phenomenal album. I really, really love that album. People of the South Wind, The Other Side.
Oh, that's great, yeah.
And
Wasn't he new about somebody else too, implied?
What, Closet Chronicles?
Yeah.
No, I don't know. I mean, I always got Howard Hughes. I'm pretty sure it's about Howard Hughes.
Okay.
You might be thinking about Carry On Wayward Son, which Carrie had converted to Christianity. For all I know, that one might be about Jesus Christ. God bless you, mate. And so, I'm not sure, but it almost fits if you put it under that kind of lens. So I don't really know, but yeah, I'm a huge Kerry Livgren fan. Just phenomenal composer. And yeah, the records sound great. I love Kansas. Yeah, they had all the prog stuff going. Very Emerson, Lake and Palmery at times. And they say Jethro Tull was a big influence on them. I don't really know enough about Jethro Tull to pontificate on that, but it very well could be. I got to go back and listen to some Tull because of that, with that in that context. So yeah, that's my last one. What's your last one, Professor?
My last one, I leaked it out earlier, is Rush. And even though these days I've heard so many of the Rush songs so many times that I don't always listen to it again, I'd have to put them up there just because if I'm thinking who's one of the top 5 best bands, I'd have to put them up there. Just every one of those 3 guys is just a phenomenal, over-the-top musician, especially the earlier albums, just great songwriting, very unusual, very unique. You know, Geddy obviously had a very unique vocal sound that, you know, especially right off the bat, caught me off guard, but, you know, didn't take me long to really actually appreciate it. And the bass playing, you know, he's got to be one of the top 3 bass players in rock, if you ask me. And maybe, if not number 1, him and Entwistle are 1 and 1A to me. Those 2 are, you know, just phenomenal. So, especially the earlier Rush. Later on, I didn't, you know, I liked it, but I didn't get as much out of it as I did, you know, from the, let's say, you know, the earlier albums, all the way up to, let's say, Permanent Waves, and, you know, maybe a few albums after that. But, yeah, I have to put Rush in there just because of the musicianship, the songwriting, also live performance. When I saw them live, I saw them a couple times. They were just spot on, just so good live, just, you know, as good or better than the record. And with that kind of musical complexity, that kind of challenging instrumental work, you know, it's very hard to reproduce that live. And they did as good as humanly possible, you know, not just the 2 times that I saw them, but you can look on YouTube live. They were just a phenomenal band, put on a great show. So, yeah, Rush is, I'm going to close my 5 out with Rush.
Yeah, that's a great one, Professor. I got to give props to their 3rd album, very, very underrated album, Caress of Steel. It's actually a masterpiece. One thing I really like about it is, like, the songs will be like in a major key, and Alex Lifeson will stubbornly be playing minor, like, blues over it, which maybe classical musicians could say that is quote-unquote wrong. And then what did he do? He'd, like, double or triple track it. I think the solos are doubled on that. So, yeah, I got to give props to Caress of Steel, kids. You got to go listen to that. No One at the Bridge literally makes the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. It's so good. 2112, I remember when I first heard it, it blew me away. I'd never heard Rush until I heard 2112, but I used to see the pictures of them in Circus Magazine. Oh, yeah, these guys look like a cool rock band. So, and yeah, Hemispheres is an absolute masterpiece. So I'm sure, kids, we'll go into a whole thing on Rush in future episodes here. But yeah, that's
the challenging thing about this little exercise we did is trying to pick out 5 of the best bands, and then it's who do you exclude? And so that was the challenge here. So, you know, we've probably left out bands that might second guess ourselves later on, like maybe I should have chose them, you know, instead of them. It's a challenge. So we might revisit this again and try it again at another time, maybe pick 5 other bands.
Yeah, we obviously left out a lot of amazing bands that, yeah, we will do this again. It'll be Best Bands Part 2, 3, 4. But we're getting towards the end of the show today, kids, so I want to remind you guys to please like and subscribe to our channel and put in some comments and tell us why you think maybe another band should be on these first 5, and I'm sure we'll get into that in future episodes. So do you have anything else you want to say, Professor?
Yeah, just as Jett said, if you have 5 that you'd like to pick, well, who are your top 5 bands? Who are the best bands? List them in the comments section below. We'd love to hear what you guys have to think.
All right, so we're going to sign off on that, kids, with that. And all I got to say is keep rocking and rock and roll. Ha, ha, ha.